Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Turn Up. We are incredibly excited to be back. I don't think we've done an episode in a month, so we are long overdue. We apologize for the delays. There's so many things have happened in the last month. It's almost impossible to keep track of all the things that we have missed. But I want to get right into it. I want to get right to the point because there's really three things that we talked about that are just leading the way. You have the government shutdown, obviously. We have the races in New York, New Jersey, Virginia, decisions being made in California being voted on as of this podcast being recorded, and then all the craziness happening between the United States and Venezuela. So let's just jump into the biggest one, which is the U.S. federal government is currently in a shutdown, which happens when Congress fails to pass the required funding bills and non-essential agencies are forced to pause operations. It's already impacting hundreds of thousands of federal workers, some furloughed, some still working without pay, and is beginning to ripple into services like nutritional programs for women and children, as well as causing delays in airport security and passport processing. The reason? There's no agreement yet between the Republicans and the Democrats, and they're at odds over some key issues. Republicans want to cut spending, reduce foreign aid, while Democrats are insisting on protections for healthcare subsidies and core social programs. So I got CK with me. I got BG with me. We're getting right into this because it is the biggest thing happening in America right now. And when we look at it, hey, what side are we going to blame? Is it the Republicans' fault? Is it the Democrats' fault? Do they both deserve equal blame? And then when you look into this, hey, is the military about to stop getting paid? How does how does that even happen? You can ask yourself, how essential is the government if it's been shut down for weeks and most of us have not been impacted at all or very little? It's like, hey, maybe a smaller government isn't a bad thing. And then you have one of the hottest topics right now with SNAP. We have 16 million children relying on it and a total of 44 million Americans, or at least individuals living in America, that are relying on it. So there's a lot of things happening right now. CK, I'm going to turn it over to you first. I want to hear your initial thoughts. Like, hey, what's the good? What's the ugly? Are we going to find a resolution? Like, what's going on here?
MR, you did not give me an opening salvo, so
No, because we're trying to get right into it. We've wasted the viewers a month. They deserve for us to get right back into this.
I'll just give you one line because I made it my mission to start every podcast by saying 257 days since Pam Bondi said the Epstein files were on her desk. People don't forget.
Yeah, and you're that people.
Yeah, me and Thomas Massey were the two people who haven't forgotten. Everyone else seems to have forgotten. Anyways, government shutdown. Yeah, so the bill, the same bill that was brought last year under Joe Biden, line for line, is the same budget that was brought this year.
No changes? Like nothing?
No changes. Now, the sticking point is that the ACA subsidies for Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, that were enacted during COVID, they're going to expire. So premiums are going to go up.
Okay.
And the Democrats say we need to extend those subsidies, put that in the budget, and we won't vote until you do. So
that is the line in the sand. That is the deal breaker for them.
Yeah, what really I think it is the Democrats knowing, hey, we can take 2 months to put the Trump admin to a standstill. If we play our cards right, we can make it look like his fault and gain chips for the midterms, and then we can go into the midterms. If we win the midterms, his administration is effectively over. So they have 12 more months to play with, and so they're just, running out the clock.
So are you saying that this is the Democrats deserve the majority of the blame for this?
Man, I don't know. I think they're both garbage, but
well, I say that because, I've seen a lot of things on the internet. I've read a lot of articles where it's talked about like, hey, the Republicans are voting to, what's it called? When a continuous resolution, basically saying, hey, literally the same exact thing. Hey, let's just extend it a few more weeks as we work out our differences. Democrats have turned that down, to your point, because they want to leverage what they want to get out of this. Then I've also seen things about Mike Johnson, just like, trying to not just make exceptions to pay the troops and things like that. And there's so many articles, there's so many things going on. It's hard to know what's actually true.
Yeah, which is why I said, blanket, I think they're both garbage. Uh, Thomas Massey proposed many times, uh, next time we do a budget, just do single budgets, okay? You want the troops funded, just do a one-line bill for the troops. You want, uh, SNAP funded, do a one-page bill for SNAP. One line, right? Says this fund SNAP in the tune of this many billions of dollars. And you can just go line by line. But why wouldn't the Republicans agree to that? Because then you can't hide pork anywhere. Because if
Facts.
so if I wanted to fund some stupid business enterprise because Coca-Cola funded me, yeah, so I'm gonna make sure that they get 3 factories in my state or whatever. If that stood alone, it would get shot down in a heartbeat. But if you hide it in a 3,000-page bill, you can do, you can. There's enough for everything, which is why our government is so bloated in the first place. So, is there a solution that the Republicans could seek out? Absolutely, there's a solution. But neither side actually care about the people, so they'll just put their line in the sand until they win. Another option Republicans can do is the nuclear option, in which the Senate Majority Leader John Thune could just say, I get to say which topics are debatable and which are non-debatable, and saying which is debatable is non-debatable. Like it's a loophole.
Okay.
It's been used
Okay.
so far only for nominations, for cabinet nominations and Supreme Court nominations and things like that to get past it.
So it could open up Pandora's box.
Yeah, I think we're moving that way anyways. So if they really cared, and honestly, I think if this thing goes to Thanksgiving and the troops start missing paychecks, and um the heat is on now, because that will be the tipping point where it starts really looking bad. I think they will invoke the nuclear option.
Yeah, I mean, the American culture is very interesting, and one thing where American culture is like the whole of Americans draw the line is like, hey, you don't f around with the troops. Like they're literally working. They're not furloughed. They're not at home chilling. They're actually working, deployed around the world, doing their thing, right?
Yeah,
And then
and
for
to
them to
Trump's
miss a
credit,
paycheck is just like,
he's found money for 2 paychecks so far, or
yeah.
yeah,
But
two
it's
paychecks
crazy
so far.
that they can't get something like that approved. And so, one thing I do want to talk about, though, because it's pretty much one of the hottest topics about this is SNAP. And so, I said during the intro that there's about 44, maybe I'm off by a few million, uh, people in America that are jeopardized of not getting their food stamps, the EPT cards, like whatever, not able to get the groceries that they rely on the government. And so I think it brings up a really interesting talk and debate, because it's like, hey, hey, you don't want 60 million kids going hungry. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. You don't want children going hungry. That's, again, another line in the sand that I don't think people want to cross or can just morally feel good about themselves or whatever. And you don't want people to starve, like not in America, not in a first world country, not in the most powerful nation in the world. Like that's embarrassing. That's horrible. We deserve to treat people with dignity, respect, everything. And then the counter to that is agree with all those things. Why do we have 44 out of 350 million people in America that can't afford food? Like, how jacked up of a country are we that like over an eighth of our population can't get a meal, whether they're taking advantage of the system, whether it's, I've read articles about, half of it is just illegal immigrants that aren't paying taxes, that aren't contributing to America, that just come in, with no plan. And um, now they're just, taking, American tax dollars to do this. And then I actually heard a Coca-Cola executive talk about, hey, how dangerous this shutdown is for Snap because they have billions of dollars from the Snap program. And it just goes to show, like, okay, if
Mr.
the program is just giving horrible, drinks and food to children and adults, like you're just creating this horrific cycle of almost like, dude, I don't know, inflating the government because you're like paying yourself through corporations, through tax dollar, dude.
25% of Coca-Cola revenue is SNAP.
That's horrible. That is so
One
horrible.
fourth.
Do we understand, like audience listening? Do you understand how horrible that is? One, it basically means that we're holding up Coca-Cola's business. That basically means the government is funding Coca-Cola to stay open. And then two, you're giving people, Americans, just horrible things to digest, and they think this is a good thing because it's free. It's like, oh yeah, I need to have a liter of Coke or whatever other soda or whatever other product they make. It's not healthy, and then you create obese people that aren't working, and now they have no opportunity to like get off this social welfare and contribute to society, and they just become like reliant on it until the government shuts down, and then they're screwed. I'm very passionate about this. Like, I don't want anybody to go hungry, but I think the system is so broken, it's angry.
Absolutely. We're so far past a person going hungry. In fact, 0 people in the United States starve to death. Uh, and we're completely, I mean, the leading cause of death is obesity in this country, and I would argue that most of those obese people are not from the upper class; it's from the lower class, and that's because there's no right. We're giving people SNAP, and we're giving them no regulation how to spend it. So even if they don't need SNAP, they're getting SNAP. They're spending all of their other money elsewhere. I mean, I'm not. This is. I don't mean this to be a blanket. Some people need SNAP. There is a
For
it's a
sure.
safety blanket. It's
Absolutely.
good. Kids need SNAP, but boy, should there be some guardrails to just to say let them spend it on whatever they want, and then it ends up being chips and soda. And then, by the way, now for all those obese people, I have to fund ACA and Affordable Care Act, and I have to pay for their medical because they have tons of medical options because they're obese. It is a never-ending cycle of takers. There's not enough givers and not enough taxpayers to pay for it, which is why we're 38 trillion in debt.
Absolutely. It's just infuriating. And what are you doing to encourage them to get back to work to contribute to society? I doubt all 44 million, or take away the children, of course, all 30 something million individuals. I guarantee at least some of them can work, at least some of them. But hey, if you're getting this money from the government, it destroys any incentive to move up, to try. Like, you're just playing the system, and you're totally fine being in that situation. It's
Yeah, Mr.
uh it bugs me.
All of the bad things you could say about the government, inefficient, bureaucracy, overspending. I would argue the worst thing about the government as a whole is we never have an exit strategy. We
Ooh.
go affordable care act subsidies. It expires. How could we let that expire? We have SNAP, and then the SNAP decreased because people are eating healthier now because they have food and now they can work better. No, it increases every year, bloated. We have wars that never end. We never have an exit strategy. Everything gets worse and more expensive over time.
Yeah, and you look at it in all these programs, at least this one, it's not solving the problem, it's treating a symptom. And then you create a new problem because of it.
And then you people float around the term, "Oh, it's a right. It's a right to have Medicare. It's a right to have food." I agree. No children should go starving, but there's no such thing as a right if it comes off the back of another human being.
Yeah, that's a hot topic. I was actually debating one of my friends a few weeks back about like what are inherent human rights so they should have. I think we should table that one for a different one. BG, we have not heard from you. Where do you stand on the government shutdown? I mean, take any angle you want, whether it's Republicans' fault, it's Democrats' fault. How long do you think this shut down until something happens where they open back up? Like, who's going to bend the knee to open this thing back up?
Yeah, let's get into it, right? So I spoke with a contact of mine at the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, and they are under the impression that based on what information they're being provided from the Treasury Department, they think that this could go on past Thanksgiving. So they're actively preparing
Wow.
liquidity for the markets for that because banks are starting to see, as I talked to you about a couple weeks ago, MR,
Yep.
starting to see a little bit of problems in the subprime auto market.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and let's not forget, right? So, government shutdown from an economic perspective, which the news hasn't even really talked about. Last year, government spending accounted for almost a quarter of GDP of the United States for all of 2024. So, we actively have a shutdown. The shutdown account that CK was referencing, when you look at the full breadth of the discretionary fund, is almost $2 trillion. A massive amount of money, $2 trillion, right? So last year we spent almost 7 trillion, and we're talking about $2 trillion of just the discretionary for funding for right now.
Yep.
Think about how much of an impact that's going to have on our GDP reporting. Further, we already have all these problems in the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So we're already behind with what the Fed is using to do their rate cuts, which they just did, last week. So I don't know. I think they're both scumbags for different reasons. I agree with CK on that point. I don't know. I don't understand still, and I know CK, we talked about this at length the last podcast. I don't understand why Democrats continue to hitch their wagon to foreign nationals, specifically for these foreign aid things that don't make sense, that Republicans continue to just pull out and say this absolutely makes no sense to the American taxpayer. And then healthcare
not just the Democrats there, BG, but yeah.
No, I know. I'm just saying in general, what I've seen the majority of the time is the Speaker of the House coming up and saying, "Hey, this doesn't look right," or even Senator, what's his name, the guy from the Dakotas, Thune, right? Thune saying, "Hey, this is crazy. I can't believe we're talking about these things." I don't know. Positive note, I think I saw reporting either yesterday or early today that said Thune actually thinks that they're seeing a chance for an off ramp here in the near term. So it gives me a little bit of hope. But based on what I'm hearing in the federal government and the nonprofit side of the Federal Reserve, I am inclined to think it'll probably go on a little bit longer. So I'm concerned about the FAA, definitely about our military.
Yeah, you see what happened with UPS. I don't think that was tied to it, but I mean, something did happen.
Yeah, something happened. We don't know, but I don't know that the fact that Democrats have come out and said out loud, short of planes falling out of the sky, we won't reopen the government, I think is not the right answer either. So yeah, definitely not a fan of people going hungry in the United States either. So
no, definitely. All right, before we move on to the next topic, give me a date where you think the government will open back up. CK, you can go first.
I'd guess somewhere between the 15th and the 30th of November. I don't think they get to the second paycheck where the military doesn't get paid. There's too much pressure, and there is the nuclear option, and they'll use it if they think they have the support of the people and they can look like heroes to use it.
All right, I like it. BG?
I'm thinking first or second week of December, 75% chance, 25% chance closer to CK's timeline.
All right. I was kind of in the same mindset. I think it goes through Thanksgiving, but it won't go through Christmas because I think that's where the American people will absolutely draw the line. So I don't think it'll actually go past December 15th. So if I was a betting man, I would probably say around the 9th through the 11th of December. So try to get a little more specific. All right. Let's jump into our next topic. The 2025 New York City mayor race has taken an unusual turn after Zohran Mamdani, I know I butchered his name, a self-described Democratic socialist aligned with the DSA, won the Democratic nomination. His platform focused on aggressive housing reform and wealth redistribution, which critics argue veers towards far-left economic ideology. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo is running as an independent after losing the primary, and Republican Curtis butcher's last name, Sliwa, whatever, Curtis is also in the race. With housing affordability, crime, and cost of living dominating voter concern, polls currently give Mamdani a massive favorite to win. And honestly, by the time this podcast comes out, he probably already won. So, guys, I just want to focus on him because he is the most outside the status quo. He is the most unconventional candidate to run in New York City. Very polarizing. The people that love him will do anything for him. And it looks like he's the massive favorite. I don't know if you guys have seen any exit polls right now showing if he's already won it or projected to win by a landslide or if it's going to be close. But CK,
no exit polls yet for New York.
No exit polls? Okay. So CK, I'll start with you. Why do you think so many people are drawn to him, right? In order to become the mayor of New York, you have to, at the end of the day, you still have to receive millions of votes to do it. So if so many people are so afraid of his ideology, so scared that he has no professional history of doing anything significant whatsoever, and now he's just capturing the hearts and minds, like what is the draw to him?
Oh, it's obvious. He's not Eric Adams. He's not Cuomo. I mean, no, I'm serious though. You keep pitching these absolute one con men and two just despicable people. And people are just finally said, I had enough. I don't want this anymore. these lifelong politicians, these crooks, like Cuomo is a crook. He's Mayor Daley 2.0. His dad was Mayor Daley 1.0. I mean, like these guys are career politicians from a family, generational politicians. They know how to cheat the system, and they've been robbing people their whole life. Cuomo is a crook. There's sexual assault allegations because this is just the aristocrats thinking they don't even have to run. They get elected and they do whatever they want. Number two, why do they think that? Because their big donors are funding them. They're just shoveling in money. There was a famous debate that I think won Zohran the election, in which they said, which country, as mayor of New York, which country would you visit first? And to me, I heard that question. I said, that's an absurd talk. What business does a mayor have with foreign affairs? That's like a federal
Nothing.
government. And down the line, every candidate, Israel, has to be Israel, 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 Israel. And Mamdani said, I'd stay right here. And they said, "Oh, are you an anti-Semite?" like, what a ridiculous thing to say, to accuse someone of being an anti-Semite. Say, because as mayor, I'd stay here. He said, "No, I'll visit the Jewish people that are citizens of New York." Like, that is the common sense answer that no politician wants to say. Why? Because APAC is funding them. And it's not just APAC. There's all of these different lobbies that aren't the citizens that are voting for you, and they control these politicians. Now, am I saying that Mamdani isn't crooked? I would guess that he is, but at least it's not a sure thing, because it's a sure thing that Eric Adams is taking money from Turkey, and that's just what we caught, and incompetent. It's a sure thing that Cuomo was, one, incompetent, two, crooked, three, killed a bunch of people during COVID, and four, sexual assaulted staffers. So, like, these are the worst of the worst of the worst. And so what would people see? They see hope in Mamdani. He's fresh. He's new. It's the same thing people saw in Donald Trump 1 and 2 times.
I like it. That's a great answer. So, BG, what would New York City look like if he does end up winning? Which he might have already won by the time you listen to this episode. What can we expect New York City to look like?
I think New York City remains New York City. Full stop.
You don't think the policy? You don't think he can have that much influence to change things?
So in fairness, there was a poll, I want to say last week or the week prior. I think it was one by the Wall Street Journal that polled wealthy New Yorkers. Something that was concerning was people who make more than, I want to say it was around $200,000 a year in New York. Almost 30% were willing to move out of New York if he is actually elected. So you could see a wealth surge out of the city, but that does not mean
is not that much money in New York.
No, I know. You and I know that. But the problem is, if you start bringing in those ultra wealthy individuals, right, then you do start having problems with regard to your taxation piece, because he's running on this platform that all of these different government things are going to be free, but there's no such thing as free in this world, right? It's funded somehow, and it's generally funded through taxation of different revenue streams. And so that's what you would ultimately see as costs continuing to go up. I think it's odd that he's kind of moved on, if you will, from the grocery perspective to try to lower grocery prices.
Probably because that was probably because the idea he proposed was terrible and made no
and
sense.
Then
so at least he pivoted from that.
Yeah, and similar to what we've talked about before, you could expect that housing affordability still, it's not going to change, right? Because as soon as you put rent control pricing in, then developers don't have an incentive to come in and continue to grow where you need additional apartment complexes. So what I foresee happening is those ultra wealthy individuals moving their capital out of New York and instead moving to Connecticut or New Jersey, and that race is currently happening right now, which is very significant, right? Because if they have the right people in place to potentially lower taxes or just be better than New York, all those people just move their assets, right? Wealthy people have mobility, poor people do not. That's
it, dude.
That's 100% true. New York could slide, right? We saw LA is it's an apocalypse town. San Francisco, which is actually cleaning up now because of more conservative policies, but for the last decade was horrible. You couldn't live there. Portland, Oregon, Detroit. I mean, you can ruin a big city. It's not that hard, and it doesn't take that long. And I think Mamdani, well, I say, I like him better than Cuomo for not being a crook. But rent control is still rent control. Like, it doesn't lower housing prices. It just makes more homeless people.
Yeah. So I think back too about how much power does a mayor really have, right? You still have to answer to the governor. You still have your state senator. You still have the president. You still have all those billionaires that make New York City run. If he wants to do this, I mean, again, CK, to your point, we have seen cities been destroyed before by policies, but do you really think that the outside entities, whether it's the governor, the president, state representatives, will allow that slide to happen if it becomes too noticeable? Or do you think he's just fulfilling a symbolic position of a hardcore socialist in a position of power?
Oh, the mayor, especially of New York, tons, tons of power. I
Okay.
mean, who was the mayor? Maybe Daley. One of the mayors said, they asked him, "You ever going to run for president?" He's like, "Why would I be president? I'm already king," or something like that. It's like the mayor has tons of power. It's not on a federal level, but in some sense, it's more power than the president. President has all these checks and balances. You're the mayor. You can do a lot more in your little kingdom.
All right, fair enough. So, if he does win, final predictions of what will happen to New York City. BG go.
You will likely see a crime increase given his stance on police force brutality and measurement numbers. You will see a cost of living increase regardless of his quote unquote rent control. You will likely see capital moving out of New York. What I do not mean by that is large corporations moving out. You will not see Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, any of the major financial services institutions moving away. They won't, because New York City is still the capital hub for the entire United States, right? That's not going to change. And then I would say you will see probably more homeless folks over time, given the fact that your cost of living will adjust and inherently have to increase. And then remains to be seen with respect to polarization and ideological gridlock. I don't know what that's going to mean for future votes for the city.
I like the breakdown. CK?
I think if Mamdani wins, shortly after, you'll see the first Republican mayor of New York since Giuliani, 2001. That pendulum swings, it'll swing right back. That's my prediction.
And I think Trump will be heavily involved in New York City, and you'll see a lot more New York City versus Trump in the headlines. And I think he's going to make himself overly involved in city level politics. But all right, with that being said, let's jump into our last topic. The United States and Venezuela are in sharp escalations driven by U.S. military strikes on vessels Washington says are tied to Venezuelan drug trafficking networks, and by the Venezuelan president's response accusing the U.S. of preparing for regime change. The U.S. has increased naval and aerial operations in the Caribbean, and Venezuela has mobilized troops and militias along its coast, framing the situation as a defense of national sovereignty. Both sides say they do not want a full-scale conflict, but the combination of live military activity, political pressure, and heated rhetoric raises the risk of miscalculation. If tensions continue to rise, this could lead to regional diplomatic fallout, disruption in energy markets, and a wider instability across Latin America, especially if a direct confrontation or accidental military engagement occurs. So, CK, there's been no shortage of strikes off the Venezuela coast of, again, alleged drug traffickers. That's been, very well documented. The question I have for you to lead this off is why now? Why is the United States focused on Venezuela, where, again, under Donald Trump's first administration, was not in the mainstream as much now as it was then, and really in the last 15, 20 years, it has not been a focal point when you look at drug trafficking. Most of that's been focused on Colombia and Mexico. So why is the United States deciding now to escalate things with Venezuela?
Yeah, it's part of his broader immigration policy, right? Trump probably won the election. I mean, there's many things that helped, but one of his more common sense, like 90-10 issues was all of the illegals coming over the border and the drugs coming over the border and just really an open faucet just pouring in from the southern border. He put the kibosh on that. I mean, to his credit, one of the few things I think he's done well is just stop the flow immediately.
Yep.
Now, but like again, back to not having an exit strategy. He stopped the flow, and what did he say? He didn't say, "Okay, problem solved. We won, ladies and gentlemen. Good to go." He just said, "Okay, let's keep going now.
Yep.
Now now let's ramp up the ice stuff." Not so popular, not as popular as what he was doing at the beginning, right? These ice
Yep.
raids, definitely more 50-50, 40-60. Uh, let's go potentially start a war with Venezuela. Oh, and, oh by the way, Russia's obviously involved because Venezuela is a puppet of Russia. So we're kind of doing this Cold War thing again.
Yep.
Not so popular. Like people don't know when, hey, we're doing a good thing. Let's just keep it here because we're the government. We just don't know when to stop.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point because, his first few months in the presidency, I think his immigration policy was the best that we've seen in the United States in and decades. Like, absolutely crushed it. But to that point, so successful so quickly. How far can you go? And I think when we look at Venezuela specifically, it's like, to your point, the United States is horrific. Like, we're horrible at regime change. We just like really not great at we're great at toppling a country, not good at building it up or not allowing a power vacuum to happen. And there is, from my understanding, zero appetite to get involved with any type of conflict with Venezuela. There's one thing, just popping boats off the coast and just dropping some bombs. Like there's gonna be people that are upset about it, but it's not a deal breaker. If you start dropping bombs in Venezuela itself, I think you're going to see a lot of resistance. I don't think American people care enough about regime change. I don't think that there's a crisis of oil and we need Venezuelan oil, at least from the the populist standpoint. So I think this is one of those like there is zero desire outside of some very hawkish, hardcore war hawks that want to get involved. But I don't see how we can get involved in Venezuela because I don't think there's any appetite whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree. I think another thing that's less in the news is there's a lot of push for South America, particularly Argentina and Javier Milei. Um, and that project, I think, has kind of floundered a little bit, and the U.S. is propping them up with trade deals and things like that. And Argentina and Venezuela have conflicted because obviously Maduro is not free market, Austrian economics like Javier Milei. He's pretty much the opposite, and those two have been at each other's throats. And so the U.S. is pushing their influence with their prop Argentina. Russia's pushing their influence with their prop Venezuela, and so we're seeing pretty much a Cold War-ish standoff happen there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too with Argentina. I always said that the United States should, focus its energy in South America to like build strong relations, work on trade partners, help invest in the area instead of being involved in the Middle East because South America is in our backyard. I did not mean we should like take over countries. That empire building is kind of, an 18th century, 19th century thing. But when it looks at Argentina, CK, I'm pretty sure you told me Argentina was the gold standard. They were doing a great job, but it looks like a lot of it was just a mirage, just being backed up by the United States because Argentinian governments, wants a relationship with the United States. That means the United States is going to prop up that government. And I don't know if we want to go as far as saying that Trump overly influenced the outcome of Argentina by saying like, "Hey, I'm only going to make this trade deal with you if he's president." I just don't know enough to say like, yes, that crosses a lot of legal lines, but it's very clear that the United States wants that government in, and they're willing to spend or do what it takes to make that happen.
Yeah, I'd push back a little. I wouldn't see a mirage. I would say, right, Argentina was
If
in
they were going to
Zimbabwe.
collapse and they needed bailouts and they needed
Well,
or
they
us to
were
buy their beef and all that.
they were in a Zimbabwe level hole before Malay, right? And when you look at long-term fixes, those usually things get worse before they get better, and two,
Yeah,
like
you can't
long-term,
microwave success.
and long-term fixes they they don't help the short term. So Malay's only been in for a very short time. I think he's doing right things, but that's not going to fix the country overnight. And uh, the problem with presidencies and democracies is that a 10-year solution doesn't win you an election in your second year. And
True.
so I get that trying to prop him up. If you believe that that is the long-term solution and it will work on the long run, then a prop from the U.S. That's the type of thing maybe I can get behind in foreign aid. What I can't get behind is bombing a bunch of fishermen that may or may not have drugs, and now you just radicalized all of the cousins and brothers, and like we're creating like so in Argentina, maybe we're creating a really strong partner 10 years down the line, economic powerhouse. In Venezuela, we might be creating the Taliban 10 years down the line. Like we continue to do that over and over and over, and I just don't get it. And it's just because we can't help ourselves.
No, absolutely. BG, what are your thoughts on this? What direction do you think we're heading with Venezuela? Do you think it's going to escalate further, or it's just going to be a couple drone shots and whatnot?
I think unfortunately I agree with CK. It's going to have to escalate, right? So Trump's immigration policy is a big part of it, and then two, I think he's going to try to use this somehow as a Ukrainian pressure perspective. So Russia has invested heavily.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
very interesting. That is
Russia
very,
has
very
invested
interesting.
heavily in South America, specifically during the Cold War. They focused all their energy on Cuba, and then it was Nicaragua, and
Yep.
then they kind of fell off the map because there wasn't really an ancillary power they could pour energy or money or things into. And then Venezuela came along, and they started pouring money and all kinds of things. So in 2014, they transferred like hundreds of millions of dollars of military equipment and hardware. It was like Su-30s, Mi-17 Hind, like all kinds of stuff, MiGs, you name it, right? S-300 systems, S-400 systems. And so over time, they built a continued partnership because you have to remember Venezuela is also an oil and gas
Yep.
exporter, right? So they're part of the potential OPEC plus framework. So significant for Venezuela in May of 2025, I think it was this year, right? Yeah, it was this year. They signed the strategic partnership agreement with the Russians. And why that matters is because it effectively created an energy sector cooperation agreement between just their two nations. So, as part of the OPEC Plus framework, what they try to do is standardize and stabilize global energy markets between their two countries to kind of fight off the power of the Middle East. And so, ultimately, it gave them significant economic power because now they're actively trading oil and gas, whether it's the distribution process or the actual refinement or just getting it out of the ground. Now they also signed, as part of that agreement, mutual support in the event that they face external threats or pressure. So the Russians effectively hitched their wagon to Venezuela to say, okay, if you guys ever have problems in South America, call us up.
Sure.
And now here we are. And that was in
So,
an effort to kind of counter U.S. sanctions to Russia and Iran.
so I think I think this bears the question: is Trump an idiot, or is he a grand strategy master? At least has those people surrounding him. You put pressure on Venezuela to put pressure on Russia to pull out of Ukraine, right? Is that not an
Yeah,
angle? Is that
it's
is
an
that
angle.
not?
It's an angle. That's why I brought it up because
Yeah,
I think Russia knows what's at stake if we attempt to overthrow, the president or prime minister or whomever. And as you know, that doesn't generally work in our favor. But maybe in this case, it might just enough to get Russia to say, okay, maybe I do need to back off and potentially consider what's going on in Ukraine. But we'll
I'm just
see.
saying, either a
People
genius or an idiot. There's no in between. No
He
in
can be
between.
people
both. No, he can be both
people have
at the
been
same time, I
making
think.
4D chess claims for Trump since he's been
Sure.
inaugurated,
Yeah.
and I'll say he hasn't gotten a checkmate yet.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It seems like he's done well on tariffs, done well on immigration. Taking it too far now, sure, but the shutting down the border was a win.
I will say, between Venezuela, Cuba, and all of these communist countries in South America, you can knock them if you want, but man, can they produce shortstops? You know, that's maybe the one thing that's good about Mamdani. We might get some superstars come out of the Bronx.
It is possible. But no, CKBG, thank you for the conversation today. Viewers, thank you for your patience and listening to this episode as well. So, closing comments for the day. I got a spicy conspiracy theory for mine, but I'll save it for the end. BG, what's your closing comments? You lost in thought there? Yeah, he's so focused. All right. CK, what are your thoughts? Wrap this one up.
Yeah, equally, I think it's important as the Mamdani race. No election in California, but they're voting on the redistricting, pushing out some Republican seats. Um, there will be sure to be some ramifications, and I think Californians will vote to redistrict and gerrymander that the districts up. We'll give more seats to California. There will be sure some pushback from red states, and they'll do the same. However, will they be able to do it legally before the midterms? I don't know.
I like it. BG, you back?
Yeah, sorry, my mute button got stuck there for a sec. I kept clicking and nothing's happening. I was gonna say somehow against all odds, U.S. economy did defy doomsday predictions for tariffs. I would caution those of us paying close attention to the economy that we are starting to see some problems in different pieces of credit markets, specifically private credit, and now, as we talked about, subprime auto, which means we will likely see some bleed over into homeownership as well. Having said that, I'm not saying it's to the level of 2008, but
I was about to ask that.
no, it is not to that level. But I think that more economic problems could occur if the shutdown continues to linger for longer than we've currently estimated.
All right. So about 6-7 months ago, we did an episode on the biggest and greatest conspiracies and our favorites. I think something, CKBG, we might want to dive into in the coming weeks is what's going on with Charlie Kirk. Things aren't making sense. Things aren't adding up. Who killed him? How he died? Everything going on with his wife. You see it all over the internet, getting close to the vice president. I don't know. I'm not making any predictions. I'm not saying I know anything that no one else says. I'm just saying not everything is adding up. I think there's a lot of questions. I don't know, man. It's just weird. It just does not make sense. It just doesn't make sense.
Cash Patel is trying to silence Tulsi Gabbard from looking into it too.
Yeah, and then Candace Owens is going on like a generational run of just saying maybe some things that make sense, and then it's just like crazy things like Elon Musk is a lizard person essentially.
And I mean, talking about that episode, what was my favorite conspiracy? Bridget Macron is a man. Her tax returns came back listed as a man.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about that real quick. I mean, at this point, the listeners either love us or they've already.
We
not
need to
listened
just
this
follow
episode.
up that episode and just readdress those.
Wait, do you like? Is that real though? Is it really like as a man?
It's real that in her taxes, it was listed as, I forget, like Jean Claude or something was a man's name. Yes. Now I think
Dude,
they're
that's
claiming
crazy.
it was like a hacker or something, but that's I don't know. It's really weird.
I guess we'll have to do the same for the Obama family then.
Yeah, I started seeing that one pop up too. But there's no way. There's no way that Obama went through all the scrutiny in 2008 that no one uncovered this.
I don't
back
believe that
then.
one.
Like, no way.
I'm starting to believe the Macron one. I also saw her slap the crap out of Emmanuel Macron on a plane in like.
Yeah, you share that video. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, what's the saying? Like, reality is stranger than fiction. Kind of feels that way. Kind of does. But we'll wrap it up from here. We're going on almost 45 minutes. Thank you to everyone that listened. We really, really appreciate your support. We apologize for the delay of episodes. I want to promise we'll get better, but CK values other things more important than this podcast. So let's kind of shame him into caring a little more about this. But as always, thank you so much. Please tell everyone you know to like, share, and subscribe to this episode. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.